super excited to have Gabe and Mariel here to talk about eye to eye. And I think it would be great first if Agnes and Deborah, if you guys introduced yourselves. I know that Deborah is familiar with eye to eye, but it's just good. Part of the benefit of these Google Hangouts is to connect educators that are across the country that might not necessarily know that you have resources available and other people that are working on the same things. And so I think connection is hugely important when we do these. So if you guys, Agnes, would you take a second to interview yourself, introduce yourself, and then Deborah can do the same.
Okay, well, hello, my name is Agnes Matheson. I'm the department chair for languages at the Blake School in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have 3 campuses from pre-K all the way to 12th grade, offer 4 languages, Spanish, French, Chinese, and Latin. And I have 21 teachers in my department. So
wow.
I'm here because I want to be able to support all my teachers and to make sure they can continue supporting all the students in language learning.
Great. Thank you. And Deborah?
Sure. I am the Director of Partnerships and Engagement for the AIM Institute for Learning and Research. It's the research and training arm of AIM Academy, which is a private school for students with language-based learning disabilities in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. We serve students from 1st grade through 12th. And we actually have an eye-to-eye chapter at our high school, and we have mentors that are serving a middle school within the Philadelphia School District.
Great. Thank you. Okay, you guys ready? Mm-hmm. Eye to eye. I'm sorry, you hear the ding. I can't turn off my sound for some reason on my phone. On my thing. All right. All right, Gabe, Mariel.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. Should we start the PowerPoint presentation, or do we should start with introductions and?
Well, you introduce yourselves, and then you can start your presentation.
So I'm Mariel Henkoff. I'm the mentoring program manager at Eye to Eye, which is, you'll hear about a little bit more in a second, but it's a national nonprofit that helps kids with learning differences around the country. So I oversee our 60 mentoring chapters, where college and high school students with learning differences and ADHD mentor similarly identified younger students through once a week after school art programs. I am obsessed with Eye to Eye. I have ADHD and a processing disorder, and I actually got involved with Eye to Eye when I was a college sophomore. I randomly got an email on my dorm listserv that said, do you have a learning difference? Do you have ADHD? Do you want to give back, mentor a younger student? So I signed up to participate, and the rest is history. So I've been working here for almost 4 years, and I love it. So I can't wait to tell you guys more about it.
Thanks. I'm Gabe Friedman. I'm the National Program Director at Eye to Eye. Much newer to the team. I just joined last summer in July. Both of my younger siblings were students and are now young adults with LD. So that's what drives my passion for this work. And I feel very lucky to be here and to be working with Mariel and the other program managers and members of the program team here, and supporting their work and our work and its expansion and growth. So thank you again, Blake, for having us here. I'll share our screen so we can go through the PowerPoint. Mariel and I will walk through that, and then we can have a discussion about Eye to Eye and how it supports the schools with which we're already partnered, and how it might support work at other schools. Here we go. Can y'all see the opening slide?
It's perfect. Yeah.
Great. Okay, good. I'm glad this works. These are some of our students, and as you can see, with the messages, they are proud of who they are. They're celebrating their LDs and ADHD, and that is a true core of our work, increasing celebration and understanding of LDs and ADHD. So we are primarily a mentoring program for students run by and for students with LDs and ADHD, with a focus on social emotional skill development. And though we run other programs, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a bit, the core of our work and our longest standing and largest program is the mentoring program that Mariel runs. And This year, we're serving in just over 120 schools at 60 mentoring chapters across 20 states. This vision, I like putting this in here because I think it grounds us in what is most important about our work. We hope to contribute to creating a world in which people with LDs and ADHD are accepted, valued, and respected, not just by society, but also, and perhaps most importantly, by themselves. And we think that the different programs in I, the different levers that we sort of push on, that world that we're hoping to create. First and foremost, and Deborah, you're well familiar with this, I is a program that pairs older students, high school and college students, with math and language-based LDs and ADHD with their younger counterparts in middle or elementary school. So the mentees are students in grades 5 to 8. The mentors are high school and college students. And the true power of the work, as I see it, and the reason why we're called I, is that every program participant, every person who's part of the I mentoring and mentee relationship is a person with an LD or ADHD. So every week, mentors and mentees meet and they work on art projects together. And each art project has as its focus a social emotional skill or competency that is not just valuable for all students, and we believe that it is, but specifically for students in our community, students with LDs and ADHD. So every chapter, every I chapter is composed of a number of stakeholders, people who make it run and thrive. And at the core of that stakeholder network are the 2 student chapter leaders. So every high school and college with which we partner, every chapter base has 2 student chapter leaders who are sort of like the heads of that chapter, the co-presidents or co-captains. We call them co-chapter leaders. And they are absolutely the driving forces of our work. And they're working with and for and serving the other folks that you see represented on this stakeholder chart. So the first is, and I'll sort of go clockwise around the clock, starting from the top. The national program coordinators are all members of Marielle's team. These are folks who, as college students, served as either I mentors or chapter leaders and are now on our team working full-time, supporting, each one has 15 I chapters in his or her portfolio. And they're helping train chapter leaders during our week-long summer training institute. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then over the course of the year, working with the chapter leaders in coaching them, sort of supporting their leadership development, and also ensuring that they have everything they need to be running really strong, successful chapters. Moving to, I guess, 2:30 or 2 o'clock on the clock. The mentee school sponsor is the primary point of contact at each one of our elementary, K-8 or middle school partners. So that person can be different at each campus. I think it depends on the org chart of the schools, but it's often a school counselor, a school psychologist, a special education teacher, a special education coordinator. It's someone who's really familiar with the students at the school who are receiving services for having a math or language-based LD or ADHD. The bottom 2 stakeholder groups at 5:30 and 6 o'clock are the mentees, and those are the primary members of the program. The mentees, again, are students in grades 5 to 8, and the mentors are, depending on the chapter, either high school students or college students. The chapter advisor is the primary point of contact, sort of the staff or faculty champion at a high school or college. So at the high school level, similar to the elementary, middle, or K-8, it's often someone who's overseeing special education services, school counseling, in some cases after school programming, partnerships. And at the college level, it's generally a member of the Disability Services Office, so either a director or an assistant director of disability services. So that general structure sort of comprises the core people components of the I chapters. Mariel, do you want to add there?
I think the big thing to remember is that I at its core is a mentoring program, but we're also a leadership development program. So the 2 chapter leaders have this really, really unique experience to have ongoing coaching throughout the year with a near peer, a national program coordinator. So somebody who's a recent college graduate who has a learning difference and has been in their shoes. And we see tremendous growth in the students who get to attend the training institute and then lead their chapters throughout the year.
Chapter leaders, and here you see in the photo the Young Leaders Organizing Institute. So our year, this sort of eye-to-eye calendar, really begins in early August when we convene the 2 student chapter leaders from every chapter across the country for a week-long summer training academy. We call it the Young Leaders Organizing Institute, which I think underscores the point that Marielle just made, that we are, as much as we are a mentoring organization, we are also a leadership development, a youth leadership development organization. So the chapter leaders, and again, this is evidenced in the last sort of chapter stakeholder chart that you saw, and also in their importance in the ongoing operation of the chapter. The chapter leaders are the core components of every eye-to-eye chapters. They're the ones who are helping with recruitment of and then communicating with mentors. They're facilitating each week's art room sessions. They're helping to pair the mentors with their mentees, meeting with school staff on sort of both sides of the mentoring relationship, that is with the high school or college faculty or staff members, and with their elementary, middle, or K counterparts. And again, underscoring Marielle's point, meeting with, speaking with, talking regularly, collaborating with their national program coordinator, their partner here at the eye-to-eye office, and helping to host community building and celebratory events for the LD ADHD community on their campuses and on the campus of their mentee school partner. This, I think, is what the chapter leaders and the other stakeholders supporting them are focusing on throughout the year. So the mentoring and the art projects that the students are working on every week really focus on improving students' strength as in their social and emotional development, and that comes in sort of these following forms. And each of the art projects that we work on has as a core objective not just having fun and getting to know a near peer mentor, but also improving their strength, their resilience, their self-advocacy skills, their metacognition, understanding how they learn and think best, and instilling a growth mindset that they can improve with effort. And that's all of those, the program objectives enumerated here are objectives in which we really believe and which we see and research proves support students' growth in school and out of school.
So one thing that might be helpful is just to give an example of a project, because a wise student once told me that eye-to-eye is an art program, but if you think it's about the art, you've missed the point. So basically, as Gabe said, each art project has a very specific metacognitive objective that will hopefully enable the younger student and the older student participating to understand how they think and learn better. So one of my favorite projects is called the Invention Project, and it's a project about accommodations, and the mentees and mentors work together to brainstorm something that the mentee struggles with, so a challenge. But they don't stop there. They think about why that thing is a challenge. So we get reading a lot. Reading's a challenge. Well, what about reading is hard for that student? Do they skip letters? Do they flip letters? Do they skip words? Do they skip lines? Do they find themselves reading the same page or paragraph over and over again and not realizing? Once they identify specifically what's challenging about that subject or aspect or task, they then come up with an invention that would help them work through that. So one example was from a mentee in my art room. His name was Jimmy. He had trouble with skipping words when he was reading, and so his invention was called a spotlight, and it basically blacked out the entire page and just highlighted one word at a time so he could read everything. Sometimes these are not real inventions. They're based on fantasy or magic, which is awesome. But what's really cool about eye-to-eye is at the end of each art room, all of the younger students share their projects with the group, and the mentors make a point of highlighting both similarities and real-life versions of those inventions or aspects of the projects. So hopefully that can give you a better idea of what our curriculum is really about.
And this slide illustrates some of the other events and programs that we work on with our school partners. So at the end of each semester, and mentees work on putting together an art show at which the students celebrate their art, and I think more important, celebrate what they're learning. So we convene members of both school communities, the mentee school and the mentor school, parents, guardians, family members, the students themselves, their friends, and the student participants get to show off what they're doing and what they're learning. And this sort of takes the form, these events, these community building and celebratory events, take various forms, including screening of Road Trip Nation, a film that Eye to Eye contributed to. And I'll focus actually primarily on the third bullet from the bottom, the My Advocacy Plan. So every Eye to Eye year sort of culminates in their creation, the students' creation of what we call a map, a My Advocacy Plan. This is a tool, a physical document, an artifact that we hope at least the mentees can use in contributing in and contributing to or participating in IEP meetings, 504 plan meetings, or simply in conversations with their teachers or others who are supporting their learning journeys. And we think that it's a really powerful culminating tool, summative tool for the students to use sort of after they graduate from the Eye to Eye program. And here finally, just a sense of some of the other work in which Eye to Eye is engaged. So the first I'll touch on is our alumni program. So we've been around now long enough that we have about 3,000 people who served as Eye to Eye mentors, and they many of them are thinking about how they can continue to contribute to and strengthen the LD ADHD community, and we want to give them avenues to do that. So we have a program manager on staff who works primarily in supporting the Eye to Eye alumni in one, finding meaningful employment in places that are that really support those who think and learn differently. And two, finding ways to give back. A lot of the mentors find the experience incredibly empowering and want to continue serving the LD ADHD community. So our alumni program, focuses on finding ways for our alumni to do that and then connecting them to those means. The Diplomats program also was sort of born out of the core Eye to Eye mentoring program, and that is, or rather that comes in the form of 10 to 15 currently serving mentors who apply to serve as diplomats, sort of ambassadors of Eye to Eye. We train them in public speaking, and they go to school campuses, to organizations, companies. Several of them spoke at the U.S. Department of Education last summer, and one, tell the story of their learning journey as a student with LD ADHD, and two, speak about sort of rights, advocacy, accommodations of people with LD ADHD more generally. So the Diplomats program is another way for us to sort of achieve the vision that we spoke about at the outset, creating a world in which people with LD and ADHD are celebrated and better understood, not just by society, but by themselves. We're hoping that through the outreach of the Diplomats program and the alumni program, we can extend that message and help to more quickly realize that vision beyond the mentoring chapters in which we're serving. So that's sort of the basic overview, and I see there's a lot more we'd love to talk about with y'all. So hoping we can get into that now.
So just to start, do you guys have any questions or comments?
Yes, I was wondering, so you have 3,000 alumni, so that's already some solid numbers right there. Do you have any data that might support some student growth in that area? I mean, have students that have been part of this program as mentees, has their academic picture gotten better during and after participating in the I2I program?
Do you want to talk about UCSF? You want me to?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple types of data. Currently, we have a partnership with the University of California, San Francisco Brain Lens Lab, and our research contact there, Dr. Fumiko Heft, is studying how eye-to-eye mentoring programs impact the mentees who are participating and impact some of the key like socio-emotional learning pieces that can enable long-term success. So things like grit, stigma consciousness, self-esteem, growth mindset, all of that. We're in our second year of that project, so that's going to take a few more years to really round out, but so far the research has been really promising. The other side is that we have a couple of partnerships with states and districts to share academic and behavioral data with us. So from the state of, we have randomly a bunch of chapters in the state of Wyoming, and from research with them, we've seen that students who participated in eye-to-eye are much more likely to improve in their math and reading scores compared to students with similar diagnoses or identifications receiving similar services but who aren't participating in the eye-to-eye programming.
So when you said they're improving, are you looking at their standardized test? Is that what you're using as a measuring tool in the Wyoming program, for example?
In that, yeah.
Okay.
So it's that they improved at much greater rates than their non-eye-to-eye counterparts.
Okay. So and the research that's happening at UC San Francisco, how else are they measuring this aside from these standardized tests that Wyoming is using?
The primary measure actually is a survey instrument that Dr. Heft and her team at the Brain Lens Lab at UCSF created. So the survey instrument itself contains 27 social emotional constructs, and each of which measures some of the things that Marielle just described: resilience, grit, growth mindset, students' response to failure. That's sort of a helplessness versus mastery scales. That's how the name of that construct. And the idea there is that we can measure on each of these constructs exactly the types of skills and competencies that we hope to instill and inspire in the students with whom we're working. We're lucky too, and Marielle touched on this just a minute ago, in that a lot of our school and district partners are actually willing to share information with us, and I should say student academic behavioral data. So we can sort of tie together or see what the relationships are between growth on social emotional constructs and growth, what we hope will be growth and improvement in academic and behavioral performance.
Okay. And the Young Leaders Organizing Institute in the summer, how is that funded? Like, do the schools pay for it? Do you have a grant? I mean, how does that work?
It's a great question, and it's actually a combination of the two. So we're a nonprofit organization. Our primary source of funding is very generous and wonderful foundations and high net worth individuals who support our work. We also ask, though, that our school partners contribute some to sort of share the program costs.
Okay.
So the combination of those two, again, primarily leaning on leveraging private sector donors, foundations and high net worth individuals, that contributes to the cost of both the week-long summer training session and year-long support, which includes not just staff time and travel and ongoing support, but also the art supplies and food and background checks and additional trainings that are required.
Okay. Those are my questions for right now.
Great question.
I have a question that so is every partnership, I kind of know the answer to this question, but discuss how the partnerships match up. It doesn't have to be like a different school to go to like it doesn't have to be a college to a middle school. It could be within your own one school, right? You do have examples where I'm thinking of Blake School, and specifically they're a K through 12, so it would set themselves up if they were interested, they could possibly have their upper school students mentoring their middle school students. And
sure. I mean, I was assuming that was a given. That I didn't even think about asking that because it's obvious to me.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple different models, but that is what we refer to as like an in-house model. So we have certain schools where high school usually sophomores through seniors. Anyone over the age of 16 can mentor lower school students. But in other cases, like for example, the AIM Academy, they mentor in a school in Philadelphia. So the high school upperclassmen travel to a middle school that's not quite around the block, but not too far, and mentor there once a week. And it's really just, it's dependent on what that school is hoping to achieve with this program and the partnership.
Right. And do you do any data analysis on the mentors themselves? Because what struck me the most when I saw you all at AIM Academy was Sam, the senior, talking about the effect that being a mentor had on him and his perception of his own learning difference. And Agnes, he basically said, if they think that the mentees are getting the most out of this, the joke's on them, because certainly the mentors are getting the most out of the program. It was really, it was such a touching sentiment, and so honest and sort of just raw about how he thought like that no adult had even considered that he was getting a lot out of this. So anyway, I was just wondering, do you pay attention to that? Because that, like, when you're doing these in-house, it's probably just as valuable information.
Yeah, I mean, so Sam's experience is very similar to mine. That's why I'm still here. I went to Northwestern University. I had been diagnosed with ADHD and a processing disorder, but nobody had ever really explained to me what that meant. And it wasn't until I did pretty well academically, but it wasn't until I found Eye to Eye and like found a group of people who learned and thought like I did, or just like learned and thought differently enough from sort of the more traditional academic model, did I really understand how big a part of my learning differences were and how I could succeed academically and socially and everything else, without driving myself crazy, basically. So the short answer is that we have a lot of really positive experiences with mentors. Like, that's not an uncommon experience for people who've mentored in the Eye to Eye program. The longer answer is that we have some older data on the benefits of Eye to Eye programming on the mentors. That's available on our website, but it's overwhelmingly positive. Because it was so positive, we're looking to incorporate some of that into our research with the University of California, San Francisco. So in this year, we're doing like a mini intro exit survey for mentors also to review some key constructs and try to measure growth.
Great.
And how are,
yeah, that was,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go, Deborah. I'm sorry. I don't mean to monopolize.
No, I was just going to say that was that data that came out about the benefits of mentorship on the mentors itself was the reason that we were interested to bring an Eye to Eye chapter to AIM. Being a school for children with language-based learning disabilities, we really thought that it was an incredible partnership to bring in to benefit our students. And then the opportunity to work with the public school on this has just been the added bonus. We had inquired about the in-school model, but we were actually encouraged to look at partnering with a local public school, and I think it was a very, very good decision on our part to do that. It's been a wonderful experience for our students, and I've gotten to go to observe one of the sessions last winter, or this winter, I should say, and it's really phenomenal to watch our kids kind of step into a role that's very different than what they do every day here within our walls. So it's wonderful, and we know the benefit that it's adding to their lives, and we know what the research says about that opportunity to mentor. So we'll be interested to see as that research develops. Mariel, please continue to share that with all of your teams, because it's really important. It's another benefit for us to share with our families that we have programming here. We're AIM, and we base everything on evidence. So to be able to share that research and say, like, this is another proven program that we bring in for our kids, it means a lot to us.
Well, and not to be cynical, but there's so many programs that we know are good, but you kind of have to figure out how you prove their worth when you're having to decide how to allocate your resources.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly. Yes.
I mean, we struggle with that all the time because everybody knows partnership is good, but you have to prove its value.
Yes.
And so that's why I love what you're doing about going to the public schools, because it adds an entirely new dimension of value to the program that you're probably not even studying. You know, this like being comfortable. These kids are already uncomfortable probably on their day-to-day lives in a learning situation, and then to put them in a new academic situation in a public school with kids that are coming from different circumstances than they are, it's probably too much to study. Honestly, they're growing too much by these experiences, if that's even possible.
Right.
Now, you know, I love it. I think these programs are fantastic. I think the anecdotal stuff is great, but the fact that there'll be actual data for it is phenomenal.
We feel the same way.
So Agnes, what do you guys do do you have a center at your school? How do you support your kids now? Like, I'm just curious what the,
you mean specifically in language or as a school?
As a school or within the language department, either one.
Well, as a school, we have a learning center for the upper school and one for the middle school. We have learning specialists in all our campuses. And in terms of language, the teachers in general are very aware of mixing a number of strategies so that they can somehow reach all the students. In our lower school, we do not really do much reading and writing. It's a lot of TPRS, teaching with comprehensible input kind of strategies, so that although it's not an immersion program, we do try to, when we approach the learning, the language acquisition, in a model where it's 30 minutes every day, starting in pre-K and going on, so that the students with learning differences do not have to sort of deal with the reading and writing portion, although as the students get older, we do start a little bit of that. But in spite of that, we still see that some students that have learning differences struggle in Spanish class. It takes them longer to reach, target reading, listening comprehension and target language production. So that's one of the things there. Middle and upper school, although yes, there is explanation of verb tenses and whatnot, still teachers are very aware, and we have connected with learning specialists time and again and done a lot of development around making sure that we are supporting all the students. So that has been a big part of it.
So I was like really excited that you were on this call, because language in middle and high school was like the bane of my existence. Like I absolutely.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it got better. There's a highlight. I could not figure anything out because in school listening is hard for me, and so I perpetually felt like I was like coming from behind. I could never follow, and then I would get home and try to do my homework and not be able to figure out what I had missed in class. But when I got to college, I had sort of like written off language, and then I got to college and was forced to take a language. And so I started fresh with like intro Spanish, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because there was like so much extra work that I could do and like so many enhancements. So we watched, I'm sure you guys do this, but like we watched telenovelas and like movies for class, but it was so helpful to have the like listen outside of class and like learn language, not just by doing the homework, but by having extra resources available to me. So I think that I'm sure what you're doing is great, but I definitely agree with the sentiment that you expressed initially, which is like it's confusing to have the opt-out like language possibility for people with learning differences, but definitely everyone with learning differences has different strengths and challenges, and how to work with that is not always easy.
Correct. Well, and this is one of the great things that technology has brought the language teaching and learning profession, and it has been the availability of products, and we subscribe to a number of the Vista Higher Learning products that help the curriculum, sometimes even got the curriculum, that has tons of video and audio as well as reading. But reading was already always available in books. But It was a matter of getting those, in the hands of students. But listening and viewing almost at will is something that really has happened in the last decade and a half. Not only now produced by companies, some good quality materials, but also online, where the teachers can also link all kinds of additional listening comprehension and viewing resources for students to access as many times as they need to, on their own time, at their own pace. So this is something that technology has been tremendous, but also I think a jump in pedagogy, where when I started teaching a while back, a lot of the language teaching was about grammar and vocabulary, and that centered pretty much the lessons. And there's been a huge shift, and I can't speak for all teachers, but we definitely have done it at our school, where yes, there is grammar, there is vocabulary, but it's definitely not the centerpiece. We do a lot of the actual reading and speaking and writing and role playing and again and again, because it's the only really good way to produce, not only for students with learning differences, but for all students to be able to produce meaningful communication and language chunks. Otherwise, they have lists. And yes, the top 5% of the kids do well learning rules and learning words and then putting them together. And that's people like me. That's why we're teaching, because we loved it and school functioned for us in the way that it worked back in the day. But we left 90 to 95% of the kids behind that had horrible experiences in language learning. And I hear times and again adults saying, "Oh, I've studied French for 4 years and I cannot say a word." Well, it makes me cry. So we have really worked hard to make sure that this doesn't happen. And one of the evidences I have of our success is that although we have 2 years of required graduation language for our upper school students, all of them take at least 3 years of language.
That's awesome.
And 2/3 of our seniors take language. So 2/3 of the students at Blake graduate with 4 years of language in high school, but many of them, if they already were here for middle school or earlier, they have many more. So they're way post-AP level, which is fabulous, which is something that did not happen 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm very happy about that. However, there's still some students that are frustrated and some students that have a hard time understanding what's going on. So potentially this I2I could be a good resource and a good source of support for them. So I'll definitely look into it, and I'll share the information with learning specialists at school and with language teachers, and see if we think that this could work.
Yeah, and one thing definitely to check out for you and for the rest of the language department is on our website, there's a project called the Ideal Learning Environment. And it's one that we use in many of our chapters, but one that could be really helpful for you and your team to use with students who may not be enjoying language the way they could be. And it's one where the students get to think of a classroom that they struggle in or could be better, could be learning more from, and then change things in it. They build their own little diorama, and so they can identify
the physical aspect of the classroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they can identify what's hard for them in that classroom, what they can do to make that better. So in some cases, it's as simple as they sit in the back of the room and they get distracted by the people in front of them. But in other cases, it's that they're so nervous that the teacher is going to call on them that they don't say anything or listen to anything. They purposely act distracted. So it's
But can students identify this? Or because I wonder sometimes, especially middle school students, that are less aware of so many other things. And I'm not talking about students with learning different. I'm talking about all middle school students.
Yeah.
To be able to zero in on what actually is the challenge.
It takes a little probing, and that's why the mentors are so invaluable. But what works is to encourage them to compare their existing classroom with a place that they really love to learn or feel comfortable in. Ask them what about their, where they do homework. Do they do it in their bedrooms? Do they do it in their kitchen? Do they do it in the library? What do they like about that they could bring into their classroom? And then what about the classroom makes it more difficult for them to learn? And sometimes that's all it takes, that nudge. And then they're like, oh, well, the light just hurts my eyes. Sometimes there's a pretty valid explanation, it's just hard to find.
Okay, good to know. I'll definitely go in there and explore some.
Yeah, because thinking from personal experience and from some of the experiences we've shared with our students, language is so different from other classes that I'm sure that they have both very positive and just like surprise experiences that they wouldn't expect, because there's so much more interaction with other students than there is in lots of other classes.
Well, another one of the challenges I have really comes from families. That so many times families have the idea that their child cannot learn language, cannot, because the child has been diagnosed with a learning difference. So it is impossible for the child to learn language because they've done research and that's what they have discovered. So that's a huge barrier, because then if the child gets this message from home, it's really hard to work with that.
We have a really, really talented diplomat. His name is Liam Haller, and he actually goes to Northwestern, but he has pretty intense dyslexia and dysgraphia. But he's like a language wizard. He teaches himself Hebrew on the side. He taught himself, I think, Russian. That's like his hobby. Oh, I remember. He taught himself Braille in elementary school because he just was like interested in it.
Yes.
So if you need sort of a culture shift and wanted to bring in a speaker, I have somebody who could probably share that message with you.
You know, just your average.
That's a very good thought. I have sent, not personally, but learning specialists have sent some of our successful students with really challenging dyslexia, but that have been successful in language class, to parent meetings. So, but of course, the parents have to come.
Yeah.
Sometimes the parents that you need to reach are not coming. So, but that's a good idea. The diplomats, I'll definitely keep that in mind too when I share this with the department.
Yeah. His story is so interesting because he could like barely read English, but was completely able to read Braille and Hebrew and all these other languages that he taught himself.
Good.
Deborah, do you?
I don't think I have any other questions.
Oh, you don't have any more questions? Is Deborah?
I don't think so.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. I was wondering, do you guys do you teach language at AIM, and how does it work there?
We teach Latin.
Latin, and do you employ specific strategies for your kids that are different than a traditional Latin class?
You know what, that's a really tough question for me to ask because I don't work for AIM Academy, so I don't actually know. So my apologies.
No, that's fair. Totally fair.
I think the reason that Latin is chosen is because it teaches kids a lot about morphology, and that's really a part of the programming for kids with language-based learning disabilities, to understand the meaningful units in words and what they attach to. So that makes sense as a second language fulfillment for graduation, to be able to build upon what they're doing in their typical reading and writing classes with that.
That makes sense. Does anybody have, I'm conscious that we only have a couple more minutes. Are there more questions? I could talk about this all day. I think mentoring with kids, and if you just happen to be mentoring kids with learning differences, great. When I visited AIM, I walked out of there and I told the head of their upper school, Chris, I said, this isn't just like a school. When you talk about employing strategies for kids with learning disabilities, you're talking about strategies we should be employing for all kids, right? Everybody should be learning these things. Everybody should have the benefits of these varied learning instruction and opportunities of mentor and mentee. So anyway, I think it's great for everybody to talk about it and to think about how social emotional skills and growth mindset for all of our kids is crucial. So, but it's great to help these kids who are struggling in certain specific areas of their academic careers, to help them see their potential and their strengths. So, anyway, if you guys don't have any more questions, I really thank you for taking your time. I am sorry, I have no idea what happened to my other RSVPers, but I can't account for them. But I thank you guys for taking your time today in the blizzard and all to get here. Thank you, Gabe and Mariel. I really appreciate hearing about everything at Eye to Eye.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us and for pulling this group.
Thank you for putting this together so that I was able to learn about it.
It's excellent. I love these things. They're so, for me, they just seem so easy. Anyway, thank you guys all. All of your email addresses are in that email that I just sent you if you want to connect with one another afterwards.
Okay.
But if not, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to reconnect or introduce you to somebody that was a program that was mentioned here today or whatever. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.